Hey guys, hey, welcome back to another video here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about things that are going on in the economy, and there's obviously lots to talk about in the economy, as there's lots to talk about globally and politically, and the whole world is burning. I mean, it's on fire.
Audio Jungle.
So, oil has been sinking. It's been plunging, right? It's been tanking, no pun intended, of course. But it's fallen quite a bit. In fact, a lot of people are complaining that there's a lot of different hands in the pocket, and people are starting to get pretty nervous. Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, issues happening all around the world with all these conflicts going on in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine. I mean, that doesn't help any, right? But what's going on right now is pretty big, and it's caught everybody surprised. It's caught the average consumer, who's been complaining about gas prices and all the hikes that's been going on in respects to gas prices, and it's also caught off investors as well. So, what the heck is going on? Well, Russia and Saudi Arabia have reaffirmed their commitment to cutting back about 1 billion barrels a day. Now, as members of OPEC, they're obviously trying to they're trying to strategize as to what they want to do in the near future here. Now, crude oil, right? Crude oil, Western Texas trades at about $75.33 per barrel. When I was actually when I was actually going to shoot this video, it was actually $3 higher. So it's fallen substantially. That's not good, folks. And Brent oil trades at $79.77 per barrel at the time that I'm shooting this video right now, and that's also fallen about $3. Now, it's not good for investors, but it's good for you and I. It's good for everybody else right now who's at the pump and who's upset with the high prices in gas. Now, how long is this going to sustain? Probably not too long. There's some things going on, some inner workings and behind the scenes, and things that are obviously resulting into this, which I'll try to cover here real quick, or cover here to the best of my ability. But essentially, oil prices will start to go on an upswing again. Now, if unfortunately, when something terrible happens in the world and the conflict starts to expand, expect to see oil prices start to spike. Now, as I mentioned, traders aren't surprised by this announcement, as crude prices have gone further down, as China export numbers are showing a substantial slowdown and less demand from the biggest Asian crude consumer in the region. Now, there's been a lot of mixed signals coming from China, and this obviously also led to oil prices starting to slump. Now, meanwhile, the US dollar, the USD, fell hard last week. US spending is going through the roof, as US President Joe Biden is pledging millions and more millions of taxpayers' dollars, not only to Ukraine, but to Israel as well, increasing the debt burden for the US Treasury. Now, Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned, and Russia have reaffirmed their commitment to cutting back oil, about 1 billion barrels of oil per day. This move obviously suggests that both Russia and Saudi Arabia are trying to protect an elevated floor price and amid a bleak demand, right? Again, I feel that this is more kind of temporary. This is not going to be long term, but who knows? We'll see how that plays out. Now, the oil demand outlook in China, as I mentioned, which is China's being the biggest importer, isn't offering much inspiration to bulls. All right, as the end of the year approaches, refining margins are falling, crude and fuel stockpiles are building, and not in a positive aspect. Now, that's obviously mirroring the situation because this is all despite whatever China is trying to do to spur the economy. It's clearly not working. And so I'm sure people within China, within their cabinet, they're also quite worried about this. Now, domestic demand has definitely lost steam. Okay, for the and there was that golden period that we had in October where oil prices kind of spiked, and now it's just kind of like on a steep decline. And so anyways, Oh, this also results to a lot less people traveling. So higher crude prices and a weakening demand for diesel and gasoline have hit profitability, okay, margins, and so a lot of China's independent refiners in the past couple months have noticed a substantial change, and as I was talking about the increase in air travel and jet demand or jet fuel demand has obviously plunged as well. More and more people are reluctant to spend their hard-earned dollars on vacations, especially around this time. And meanwhile, of course, when the economic conditions are uncertain globally, the political situations in a lot of the countries out there, with all this global uncertainty, that's also adding fuel to the fire, as so to speak. So a lot of international flights from China being particularly slow to recover. Chinese jet fuel consumption is likely to rise gradually through early January, but we probably won't see an uptick until the second quarter. So actually, that's quite a long time when you really think about it. But that's just kind of some people forecasting. Now, China's oil product exports are to plunge or forecasted to plunge by 40% in the month of November, and refiners have already used up most of their fuel export quotas for 2023, and the government pretty much told them late in September, do not expect any more this year. Now, that will likely lead to a major drop, or more likely lead to more of a drop in diesel shipments, which account for most of the country's overseas fuel sales in the last couple months of the year. So obviously, consumers are starting to feel that gas prices are starting to kind of come down a little bit, to maybe not to some kind of normalcy, because they're still quite high, and especially depending on where you live, there could be higher than normal, higher than average. But we'll see how this continues to play out. But you know what? We're going to talk. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that's been kind of in the news that you and I have been greatly impacted by, but it's been kind of flying under the radar a little bit, right? Because right now the focus and the attention obviously is on all the conflicts that are happening globally. And of course, with things relating to the economy and everything that's going on there, that obviously is going to take precedence. But this also has to do with things related to the economy and related to our wallet. But the thing is, it's again not many people really know about it, right? So I'm going to try to shed some light on it to the best of my ability. Now, Loblaws, if you guys know who Loblaws are, they're one of Canada's biggest grocers. Apparently they're really disappointed with this new grocery code of conduct that the Canadian government is trying to spearhead. Now, this grocery code of conduct, now I'll talk a little bit about that, but as to what it is and why it matters, and how it could potentially affect, people like you and I. Now, this grocery code of conduct, essentially, well, what Loblaws is trying to say is that they're disappointed, they don't like it, they're trying to push back on it, and there's other retailers as well, like Walmart and some other entities that are out there that are not really buying it or like the idea of this new initiative by the government. Now, essentially, Loblaws is warning that instead of doing more good for Canadians, it could do more harm. By implementing this grocery code of conduct could actually cost its consumers about $1 billion in higher food prices. So what exactly is going on? What the heck does this mean? Let's try to make some sense of this, okay? And what the heck is this grocery code of conduct? Now, apparently it's nothing really new. The government is kind of following suit as to some other countries like the UK and other, and what's kind of happening around the world. Now, there's a lot of measures being implemented by governments of various countries to try to create a little bit more transparency and a better understanding in terms of what's going on in respects to food prices, and really trying to essentially hold accountable the retailers and people within the food industry, so that they have some kind of codes and ethics in place, and some kind of protocols that everyone needs to follow to kind of keep it a fair marketplace, right? So essentially, I was talking about Loblaws, very concerned, very disappointed with this new grocery code of conduct, and complaining that instead of doing more good for Canadians, it could cause more harm, potentially raising food prices for Canadians by about $1 billion. So let's try to unravel this and understand what's going on. So, first of all, we need to understand what is a grocery code of conduct and why does this matter. So, essentially, securing Canada's essential food and grocery supply chains has been the number one priority right now, right, for the government. There've been too many complaints, since the pandemic about food prices just kind of going higher and higher to the point where people don't really have like the kind of money that they did before to purchase the kind of food that they once did. Uh, this is becoming an issue. It's becoming probably one of consumers' number one complaints, and it's come to the point where some people are just really eating. When they go to the grocery store, they're not, first of all, they're not getting value for their dollar, right? If you remember, $20 would have got you quite a bit of groceries pre-pandemic years, and now it's getting to, and even actually pre-pandemic years, people were complaining that $20 doesn't get you a whole lot these days. Now $20 does get you like maybe two, three items, if that, right? I mean, depending on what you buy, but I mean, you're not going to get a steak for $20. I mean, maybe, I don't know, depending on what you like, what you don't, but nonetheless, people are feeling the pinch, right? And so essentially, most people are not making more money, and they're making, and some people are making less money, right? And but whatever money that they're making, there's not enough dollar to go around, right? And when you have to think about putting fuel in your tank, gas prices, you're talking about food, and you got your rent, your mortgage, and then all the other things associated with that. If you got kids, they've got activities, things that you want to put them in with sports, recreation, etc. I mean, and then you also got to buy clothes, right? And there's all the necessities and things that you need to live and survive on a day-to-day basis. So people are complaining. So this is why the Canadian government felt that the need for a grocery code of conduct is essential to help promote predictability, to help promote transparency, to hold accountable the people in the food industry, and to ensure fair dealing as ingredients and products make their way from suppliers to stores and eventually to your home, on your table. So, what is a grocery code of conduct? Well, we covered that. But essentially, how it works is that the code is aimed to offer retailers and suppliers some kind of a mechanism for how fees and fines are levied in the grocery industry. So it would essentially provide retailers and suppliers with an avenue to launch a complaint, okay, if a party fails to live up to the provisions of the code. Now, that's great. That's fine. That's dandy. So how's it going to be implemented? Who's going to implement it? Who's going to oversee it? Well, the Canadian government is going to establish a committee that's going to, like, kind of like a ruling, like a governing body that's going to oversee and monitor to ensure that everyone in the industry is following through with the protocols and the mandates, and to make sure that we have a fair marketplace. Now, Loblaws wrote a letter on November 1st to the committee that's there to establish and develop this code, indicating its concerns and, obviously, the fear that they have is that this is actually going to end up costing consumers about $1 billion. Now, the chief financial officer, Richard Dufresne, wrote in that letter, right, that the grocer Loblaws cannot endorse the code in its current form, and requested a special meeting of the industry subcommittee to address their concerns. Now, as a grocery code of conduct nears completion, with Canada's biggest grocer, Loblaws, and then other people as well. There's other companies. I think I mentioned even Walmart and some others that are not really feeling this grocery code of conduct, and feel that there's too much light. There's too much attention on them, and they feel that's a little unfair. And anyways, they've got concerns, and they got some questions, and they're looking for some answers. Now, there's obviously a number of challenges that Loblaw has, which we already talked about, and they're worried about prices of food going higher, and they don't want to be labeled, obviously as they don't want to be grilled to the steak because prices of food are going to go higher. So, anyways, they want to come to the table and they want to try to hash out some of their or to be able to get some of their answers to some of their questions, and by supporting these initiatives, maybe the consumer is going to feel maybe it's going to be better for us as customers. But I would like to know. I mean, I'm sure you would like to know, why is it that the food retailers, are having a big concern with all this? I'd like to understand where exactly they feel that by implementing some kind of a ruling, or some kind of I guess an initiative to be able to address the concerns that consumers have, and to be able to monitor and track, to ensure that all the food retailers and suppliers are acting in a fair kind of capacity. Like, how is that such a bad thing, right? I mean, we've been complaining about food prices for the longest time, and food prices are still high. They've been at the highest that they've been in many, many years. So I'm trying to understand from the supplier's point of view, why is it that they have a big concern about this? Now, sure, could this, it's obviously it's going to create more transparency, right? As we discussed, and it's going to hold those in the food industry more accountable for when things like this happen, when food prices go up. So why is that such a bad thing for the consumers? Now, if you're a company, obviously, profits are an important thing, but you also have to understand that your consumer is I mean, you're supplying to the consumer. At the end of the day, if you've got nothing, if you're not doing anything that's of concern, then you technically got nothing to hide. So, anyhow, grocers definitely have been under the pressure, which we've already talked about, from the federal government to stabilize food prices after obviously high inflation and series of interest rate hikes. And I mean, we talk about this all the time, have definitely eaten into our household budgets, right? So we as consumers feel the pinch, and now we should feel appreciative of the fact that the government is actually trying to do its part by implementing this initiative to help oversee and monitor and hold those accountable, those in the food industry, to ensure that we have fair food prices every time we go out and purchase any groceries, right? So the code is apparently near to completion, and they feel that it should be up and running by the end of the first quarter in 2024. So this is interesting. So sometime possibly by March, maybe April, they should kind of go into effect. And Loblaws in the letter actually indicated that, saying that it would make it very hard for retailers to hold suppliers accountable, create a lack of certainty in the supplier-retail relationship, as it poses risk to prices and availability and discount programs. So again, I'd like to know a little bit more as to their concerns and why they feel this is a negative thing. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that the code would either raise food prices or negatively impact retailers' ability to meet consumer needs. And this is said by one of the members of the committee. So, anyways, there's the Sobeys, Metro and Empire Company Limited, which owns Sobeys, affirmed their commitment to adopting the code in their statements recently. Now, Costco Canada is another big grocer and retailer, and obviously they haven't responded yet to any of this, so they're probably doing their research and diligence to try to ascertain exactly what this is and how this is going to potentially impact them. But at the end of the day, I think it's important, and I think we'll need to, there's definitely going to be the need for some, or it's going to warrant for some more conversations to ensue, and to try to get a little bit more clarification. And the federal food minister also, when asked, didn't really want to comment on this. So obviously it's still being worked on, and I'm not going to say it's in its infancy. Since January, the government has been working on this initiative, and I think, in as I mentioned, by next year, first quarter, it should be out there, right? So, with all the pressure on the retailers to stabilize food prices, I can't see that being a bad thing. People call it greedflation, call it what you want. But there has been some weird inner workings. There has been some strange things going on, definitely, and it doesn't make sense why food prices are spiking the way they are. And you can't keep blaming it on the pandemic. And yes, there are supply chain shortages and stuff like that. But I mean, there is the obvious food stuff that shouldn't be spiking like they are. Having said that, it could definitely be a public relations disaster for a lot of these companies if they don't follow suit or at least play their part and abide to this new mandate. And look, you don't have to just wholeheartedly abide to whatever the government throws at you. Obviously, we know that the government's not very reliable, especially when they're coming up with things. But at the end of the day, when they have something in place here, something that could potentially help consumers and also help those in the food industry, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And so we just have to kind of find some common ground and try to understand the inner workings as to what those initiatives are, and everyone's got to do their part. Now, we as consumers, we just got to go to the grocery store and make sure that whatever we're purchasing is a lot less than what we're normally accustomed to, and so it definitely does pitch the rule for pitch new rules for grocers. And right now, we still don't understand how the fines and the levies and the punishments that could potentially arise from those not following through with the new rules. But I'm sure it will be publicized because obviously this is going to be public information, right? So efforts to craft this new Canadian Grocery Code of Conduct is quite meticulous and is going to take some time. But it seems like the government's on its way to finalizing that, and it could definitely be a major milestone and definitely be a positive for especially those who have been struggling financially and felt that their voices have been or people have been listening to them. Now it seems like their voices are speaking the loudest, and it could definitely be a good thing. So, with all fairness, let's see what happens. The industry observers now at this time have cautioned that the trend of big grocers using their market weight to impose fees without negotiations could lead to less competition, higher food costs, and fewer brands on our store shelves. Be it as and so be it. And if that's the case, that's the case. I think there's still going to be plenty of competition out there. So let's see how this comes along, and we'll definitely have to provide you with some updates. So BlackRock, who hasn't heard of BlackRock? Well, if you haven't heard of BlackRock, they own everything. So BlackRock is investing $550 million in Occidental carbon capture. So $550 million of where's that coming from? It's coming from you. It's coming from clients' money. And what they're going to do is they're going to put it into this Occidental carbon capture program, which is run by the Occidental Petroleum Corporation Stratos project. And this will actually be the world's largest plant capturing carbon dioxide directly from the air. All right, so essentially, BlackRock's diversified infrastructure business signed an agreement through one of its funds to form a joint venture with Occidental's a 0.5 subsidiary that will own Stratus. The company said Tuesday. Now the BlackRock's investment represented about $550 million into this project, represents about 40% of the project's total $1.3 billion of cost, making it perhaps one of the largest investments in direct air capture to date. Now, it also means that Occidental's share of the cost is reduced, freeing up capital for its Permian Basin oil and gas operations as well. Now, Stratos is designed to pull 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide out of the air each year, roughly equivalent to the emissions from 1 million barrels of oil, and then bury the planet-warming gas underground. So it's interesting, right? So Stratos is projected to extrapolate 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the air, right, each year. and this is equivalent to about 1 million barrels of oil. And then what are they gonna do? They're gonna bury this planet warming gas underground, generating carbon removal credits. Now, many companies such as Amazon, Airbus have already agreed to buy some of these credits to offset their emissions. And the project, which is expected to start up in 2025, is currently under construction in West Texas, and it's about 30% complete. So obviously, this is something that's of interest to me. I'm sure it's of interest to you. I'd like to learn a little bit more about it, get to know a little bit more about this project. Now, Occidental said it's receiving strong demand for the credits, which are seen as higher quality than other types of carbon offsets that rely on complicated and quite shady or dubious emissions, whatever you want to call it, accounting. But at the end of the day, this is a very interesting project, and I'd like to know a little bit more about it. So, as we're able to share more information, we'll definitely share. In the meantime, I want to thank you guys for joining. We really appreciate the support. Please continue to support us. Please continue to watch our videos. And if you like and hear what you see, definitely hit that like button and share this. It definitely helps with the YouTube algorithm. We'll see you in the next one.